Hey y'all, welcome to Oh My Word with Katie. Let's talk about Wuthering Heights. Now, before you skip ahead, if you have not read Wuthering Heights, let me just tell you, this book is absolutely crazy, full of drama. It is compelling as all get out, okay? I just read this book for the first time a few months ago, and I had like low to medium expectations of enjoyment. It blew those expectations out of the water. But I still don't know what to think about this book. In other words, what are we supposed to get out of Wuthering Heights as Christians? I don't know the answer. I'm just going to tell y'all, but I think that's okay. I think there are certain books like Wuthering Heights that the more we discuss them and maybe the more we reread, like I could see myself reading this again in 10 or 15 years, the more we get out of it. Again, if we're filtering our fiction through the lens of scripture and we're viewing the events of the fictional novel through the lens of the biblical truths that we know, man, there's so much to glean. And I said this book is full of drama. I mean, from beginning to end, it's just drama, drama, drama. I mean, mental illness, unrequited love. Well, not unrequited, star-crossed lovers, I guess I should say. And there's everything from like cruelty to animals to domestic abuse to a lot of terminal illnesses. Like it seems like a disproportionate number of terminal illnesses. Um, and just, I mean, at one point, somebody digs up another person's dead body in order to just hold them close to them again. Like, ew. Okay. This book is cray cray. But at the very, very end, there's a glimpse of redemption. And I'm trying not to spoil things too much for y'all, but I hope I gave you a glimpse of just what all is involved in this book and how it is not just a dusty old classic. I promise you, if you read this book, it's compelling at the very least. You might love it, you might hate it, but I want you to read it so we can talk about it. So if you haven't read it, please read it. If you have read it, email me and tell me what you think. I'm listening to this other podcast called Close Reads. They did a whole series of episodes all talking about Wuthering Heights. And that's helping me glean some more stuff from it, as a believer. But yeah, if you have any thoughts on this book, please let me know. And don't be afraid to read the classics. Some of them are a lot more compelling than you give them credit for. And some of them are going to have a lot of treasures to find the more you reread and the more you discuss. But anyway, that's all I have. I hope you'll enjoy my interview with Karen Swallow Pryor. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Oh My Word with Katie, the show where we hear from Christian writers, give you amazing book recommendations, and marvel at all the ways God shows up in words and stories. I'm your host, Katie Ginn, and I am fangirling a little bit over our guest today because she is someone who I have loved to follow online for a long time now, Karen Swallow Pryor. Karen is a writer, a reader, a speaker. She is the 2025-26 Carlson Scholar at Bethel Seminary. She's written You Have a Calling, Finding Your Vocation in the True, Good, and Beautiful, as well as the book we'll be discussing today, which is called On Reading Well, Finding the Good Life Through Great Books. She's written a memoir called Booked, Literature in the Soul of Me. She's written, co-edited, contributed to numerous other books, has a monthly column for Religion News Service. Her writing has appeared in Christianity Today, New York Times, all the places, all the things. And she even hosted a podcast called Jane and Jesus, which I'm going to try my best to get her to resurrect. But Karen, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a delight.
Yeah. So before we get into On Reading Well, both the book and the concept, I would love to hear kind of a two-pronged question. Can you remember like the first book or story or author that captured you? And then was there a book that prompted you to specialize in the area of literature that you have specialized in?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll try to keep this succinct. Because but it's a great question for a book lover. And so I actually remember being about 5 years old in my room reading myself, as opposed to having my mother read to
Mhm.
me, a Dr. Seuss book. and just like using my finger and reading out loud and being so delighted that I could read it on my own.
Oh.
But I would say a little bit later in, third, fourth, or fifth grade, I just fell in love with the Black Stallion series by Walter
Mm.
Farley. I loved horse stories, Marguerite Henry and the Misty of Chincoteague. I loved horse stories. I got lost in those worlds completely as a grade schooler, and you just couldn't take my nose out of a book.
Mm.
When I decided to specialize in 18th century British literature in my PhD program, I mean, I was studying all the literature, medieval literature, Anglo-Saxon literature, the novel. And so, I honestly think that narrowed focus came to me because of a professor, because
Okay.
that professor was the one who taught that material, is the one who took the most interest in me, invested in me. And looking back, that's really, I think, why I pursued that field of study, is because of a great teacher.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. My creative writing teacher in high school was also the literary magazine advisor for our school and made me editor my senior year. And just
Mm.
now, my day job is I'm a magazine publisher. So, yeah, it's if
Mm.
it wasn't for her, I seriously doubt I would be doing what I'm doing today. So,
I love that.
yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, so you specialize in 18th century British literature. Do you have a favorite book from the era if you had to pick one?
Well, yes, probably. It's actually, I'm rereading it for the umpteenth time now and writing about it on my Substack and falling in love with it all over again. And that is Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. It's just a phenomenal satire. My specialty came to be more the English novel. This is a pre-novel, so I ended up going into 18th and 19th century, and I love British novels. But strictly 18th century, it has to be Gulliver's Travels.
Okay, so you called it a pre-novel. What
Yeah.
form is it? Because I haven't read it yet.
Okay. So novels really developed in the middle of the 18th century, the English novel proper, with Samuel Richardson's Pamela, which I also love, and Henry Fielding's The History of Tom Jones. And um, something like Gulliver's Travels, or some of the works by Daniel Defoe, or even Don Quixote in Spanish literature, are sort of a bridge between medieval romances and what would become a novel. They're tales of adventure,
Okay.
but they don't necessarily have the narrative coherence and unity that the novel would come to have. And sorry, you've asked me my big
Yeah, no, that's good.
right. And that, just to answer it, really, what the novel really ends up doing as it develops as a form is focusing on the rise of the individual, like the modern individual with will and agency. And it very much is the genre of the modern age. And so in the 18th century, we sort of see that transition taking place, but it doesn't happen until a little bit later, and then of course really thrives in the 19th century, when it was all about the individual and
Mhm,
improvement and progress and
mhm.
all those things that make us who we are today.
Okay, okay, very cool. Yeah, things I did not know. This is why I have you on the show. All right, so on reading well, when you say on reading well, like, how does one do that? How
Mm.
does one read well? If you could sum that up in a sentence or two.
Yeah. I mean, we're reading all the time, right? We're reading tweets and social media posts and emails and memos and text messages. So those things we're reading all the time, but we're not necessarily reading them well. They don't even necessarily deserve to be read well. They're not meant to be literature. And so reading well means, briefly, reading rich, good literary texts well, so that we read them slowly and reflectively. And rather than reading them for information, like we do most of the things we read them for formation. They form our character, our spirit, our mind, our soul, because of the richness of the language and what well written, well read language can do.
Mhm. That's so good. So, for those of us who, because I've read all kinds in my life, but you know, a lot of people just stick to, you know, the John Grisham and the, you know, the bestsellers, and they just go to Barnes and Noble and grab something. Um, any tips for getting excited about the classics and classic literature?
Mm. Yeah, I do have some tips, and I do want to say there's absolutely nothing wrong with
Right.
reading John Grisham or suspense I mean, I run, so I listen to suspense novels on Audible. I love some Stephen King,
Mhm.
and I've been known to grab a novel at the airport when I've run out of whatever I brought with me, and so there's a time and place for that. But of course, we all know, it's just like, just like food. We can grab a
Mhm.
quick snack because it's convenient and easy, or hopefully we will spend more time eating rich good food that is healthy and well made, and we know that that's better for us,
Mhm.
and so good literature, classic literature, does demand more of us, but it also gives us so much more. It's more than just entertainment. And so there's so much classic literature out there that my first tip is to just like look for something that actually interests you. Don't read something because you think you're supposed to read it. Read something that's about a topic or time period or by an author that for whatever reason interests you. Pick a short work if you feel like it's just, you're never going to be able to finish it, or pick a long one and give yourself a year to read it. It's
Mhm.
not a competition, it's not a race. And then there are, you know, because I'm an English professor and I've taught in the classroom so much and benefited so much from myself having and giving my students the opportunity to have conversations, reading good literature really is better when it's done in community.
Yes.
Not just the classroom, but a podcast or an online group or even just reading something that this is what I'm doing on Substack, is doing like long slow group reads of works, because we have so much to enlighten one another about in the things that we see and reflect on in works of literature. So of course we read alone sitting in a chair by ourselves, but we can learn so much more by reading with others who are reading the same things, whether it's a book club, a class, or just a good guide. And of course, I've done that myself. I've produced a volume of 6 classics that give spoiler-free introductions to the works of literature, for just to sort of give you a framework for stepping in, and then discussion questions to help you think about and ask good questions to get more out of the text. And so there's so many ways to really engage with a good text. And time is so short that you really should read something that you're going to enjoy at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's so good. And the thing about community is so true because
Mhm.
I keep feeling like, okay, I just read this awesome classic I'd never read before. Who's read this? I need to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Like, or me and my mom will be like, okay, I love this book. You need to read it so we can talk about it. You know,
Mhm.
that's our classic line. Read
Mhm.
it so we can talk about it. So yeah.
And this I've never thought of this before, so thank you for prompting this. I don't know why we have this sort of sense that we're supposed to read a book and on our own and get it on our own, when people who watch sports um want to watch them with other people, or at least talk
Mhm.
about it the next day, right? Or if
Mhm.
you go to see a movie, I mean, of course we can go to a movie alone, but don't most of us want to go with friends and talk about it? I mean, so many of the things that give us joy and pleasure give us more joy and pleasure when we get to talk about them with other people. And so classic literature is exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get to a book that I have been dying to talk to you about very soon. So, in your book on reading well, each chapter talks about a classic work of literature and then the virtue, like the sort of classical virtue that that book can teach us. How did you pick which books to write about?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. I have all my notes and sort of like a little chart, trying to figure out, match up the works with the virtues. This book project went in an entirely different direction than the one originally planned, but I'm
Mm.
really happy with it. I mean, I really had to start with the books that I know and love the most. I mean, I've been teaching literature for decades, mostly British literature, mostly 18th and 19th century, which is why that's overly represented in in the book, but also I try to read more modern things, and I like modern literature. And so I first actually I started with a list of all the possible works that I wanted to write about that and the virtues I thought that they could reflect. But then I had to have some logic behind the virtues that I chose, because there are lots of different lists of virtues, the cardinal virtues, the Christian virtues, the classical virtues, the civic virtues, lots of different lists. And so when I settled on sort of the groupings of the virtues I wanted to cover, then I just tried to see which works of literature that I felt comfortable writing about because I know them well enough, to match those up with the virtues.
Mhm. Yeah. Was there a particular chapter that was particularly difficult to write?
Actually, the chapter on justice, which centers on Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities, was the most difficult, mainly because the virtue of justice is, I think, the hardest to really understand and represent well. It's so complicated. It's actually one of the only virtues that, at least the only one in my book, where most virtues have to do with our own individual character, they're internal, and justice pertains to that, to being a just person, but it also is a social virtue. Like, it's about a just society and community. And so it was a really difficult, and there's economic justice and moral
Mm.
justice, all the different kinds of justices. And I'm not a moral philosopher, although I like to read it and learn about it. But here I was having to present a complicated virtue within the framework of moral philosophy, and talk about it in the context of a book. But I was really happy. And I don't remember when I settled upon A Tale of Two Cities, but it was a perfect novel, I think, to
Mhm.
consider and reflect on the virtue of justice.
Yeah. I think I read that in, like, ninth or 10th grade. I'm gonna have to go back and reread it at some point because some of these books that you read in high school, and then you're, like, twice the age you were in high school, I mean, your thoughts definitely change and, what you think about the book.
Right,
Like,
right.
I don't even remember.
Absolutely.
I don't
Absolutely.
like, I don't remember even that much about like, I remember the basic plot, but, I mean, it would be like reading it for the first time, so.
It would be, yeah, yeah, that's true of so many classics, so
Mhm.
especially when we read them when we're young and often too young to really appreciate them.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything in On Reading Well, the book, that you think may surprise people?
Well, I talk about it, and the book is talked about in terms of classic literature. I have a very wide, broad definition of classic literature, so I include a lot of contemporary literature. So I would say that my chapter that centers on a short story by George Saunders, whom a lot of classic literature readers might not be as familiar with, might be surprising simply because he's a contemporary writer writing now. His work is very startling and often not comforting. I know he will. I mean, classic literature is proven to be classic because it passes the test of time. George Saunders will pass the test of time. I know that.
Mhm.
He's a really excellent writer and artist. And so just that story choice might surprise people, because it's some people might not consider it classic literature yet or great literature, but I do,
Mhm.
and I'm confident that
Yeah.
time will prove to be so. So that might be one sort of surprising chapter.
Mhm. Alright, so then you kinda alluded to this earlier, but, for people who want to read well, they can read your book, listen to podcasts, subscribe to your Substack. Are there other sorta resources or writers that you might refer people to?
I mean, there are a number of books out there. There's one classic that I think a lot of people love, How to Read Literature Like a Professor. It's a great book that is an introductory way of just sort of giving the apparatus and sort of the terms and the things to look for when reading
Mhm.
literature. I think that's a helpful resource. Often the introductions that you might buy to even a cheap paperback edition, make sure it's a good. I will say this because works that are in the public domain can be printed by anyone. And if you go on Amazon and look for a certain title, you really should look for the reputable real publishers like Oxford or Penguin Classics, my own books, and not one that is just printed on demand. That may I actually ordered one of those a couple of years ago. It was Charlotte Bronte's The Professor, and the book was printed backwards. I
Oh,
can't read it. It was like, so I have to buy another copy at some point when I get back to it. I literally couldn't. I tried. I was like, okay, I started the last page, and it just, my brain
yeah.
couldn't do it. Yeah. So, even the reputable publishers of literary classic, their books are not that expensive, and of course you can use the library. But
Yeah.
all that was to say that often, a well-written introduction can help you.
Mhm.
I, I'm cautious with some of them because I don't like to have the spoilers. If I've never read a novel before, I don't want to know, even
Mhm.
if it's already out there. I just want to be surprised, and that's why in my introductions to my classics, I included no spoilers, because there's a joy of discovery that happens that you can never get back once you've read a novel for the first time. So
Mhm.
yeah.
That's awesome. I'm glad yours are spoiler free. Are you doing any more? Are you planning to do more of your, intros to the classics?
Nothing definite. I've got another book proposal I'm working on that might be sort of similar. And then, but if life is long enough and I have enough time, I'd love to do more.
Mhm.
And people have said that it's like having a little classroom in your hand,
Mhm.
because I'm equipping and preparing. And then the way that I teach in the classroom is I use the Socratic method. So I ask a lot of questions. And
Mhm.
so the questions there are the ones that I've written are designed to lead you to some reflections that you will help you get more richness out of the text. So
Okay. And
hopefully.
yeah, and so I know you've done Frankenstein, Jane Eyre, and then
Frankenstein, Jane Eyre, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, The Scarlet Letter, and Heart of Darkness, and what am I missing? I'm missing one. There's
I should
6.
have had your
Yeah, no. um, Frankenstein, Heart of Darkness, Jane Eyre. Oh, Sense and Sensibility, Jane
Okay,
Austen.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Um, all right, so speaking of introductions, introductory materials, spoilers, I recently read Wuthering Heights for the very first time. And first of all, wow, oh my goodness, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still
Mm.
listening to podcasts about it. But it had a family tree at the beginning, which I guess most editions do now. The first edition apparently did not. And then they were like, ooh, readers are getting confused by all these names and relationships. And so there's a family tree. And I analyzed that thing. It has
Mm.
birth dates, marriage dates, and death dates. And so I knew it wasn't like, I had a sort of a vibe for the book, but I didn't really know exactly what happened. And so I was like, ooh, she marries him, and then this, and then wait, there are two Kathys. Which one is the Kathy? And all this stuff. But I would just love to get your thoughts on this book. I would love for you to do one of your introductions to this book. But
Mm.
do you? I feel like the number one question about this book is: do you see it as a love story, or if not, what
Mm.
what
Mhm.
descriptor would you give it?
Okay. Well, this is such a cliche thing, and so pardon me for being part of a boring cliche, but people tend to be either Team Jane Eyre or Team
Mm,
Wuthering Heights, and I have some theories for why, but I am definitely Team Jane Eyre.
uh-huh.
Um, Read Wuthering Heights in high school and then in grad school, and just do not, I never liked it that much. So
Okay.
it's one of those, but again, it's been years now, so I
Yeah.
certainly would go back and reread it. But what I would say in answer to your question is, is that it is more romantic, like capital R romantic,
Mhm,
which than Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre it does definitely have some romantic elements to it, but it's more realistic. And
mhm,
so when I say romantic capital R, I'm talking about, it harkens back to the romantic era of literature, which does often include and center on love stories, but what it does even more than that is center on sort of ideals, like ideals, more black and white understandings of good and bad, or good and
Mm,
evil, and right and wrong, and also romanticizes things, including love relationships. And so I see it as overly romantic, and I think that does include its view of love. Like, it's a
yeah.
romanticized view of love.
I have to put love in air quotes because it's a romanticized view
View
of,
of dysfunction?
yeah,
No.
some kinda situationship, that I mean, but I guess that's why I found it so fascinating, because I was like, "Let me grab my popcorn and settle in. What is happening next?" Like, this crazy train is just I couldn't look away.
And what I found most interesting about the novel, again, having read it for a number of years now, is its narrative framework. The way it's sort of a story within a story,
Mhm.
which to me, again, like another novel that does that I love is Heart of Darkness, and also Frankenstein. So I love those sort of complicated narrative structures that ask more of us than just like a simple plot summary would seem to
Mhm.
suggest. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's the housekeeper that's telling the story to this random guy that's
Right,
a
right.
tenant of Heathcliff's, and then that guy kinda takes over telling, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot, but I don't know. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but then I'm trying not to spoil anything, like, what I enjoyed so much for the vast majority of the book is all the drama, and then at the end, you get this glimmer of hope, and I loved that too. I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet. I'm so glad." Um, but I mean, am I a bad person for just enjoying the drama as much as
No, no, not at all, not at all. And but you even just sort of recognizing that I think is helpful. Again, it goes back to even reading John Grisham or Stephen King. It's just there's a joy and pleasure that is had in a good story, well told. It doesn't have to. That's the whole point of reading. Even though I wrote a book about developing character and pursuing virtues by reading good literature, to me that's actually secondary to the joy of reading
Mhm,
good literature.
mhm.
But the thing is, the problem is that we don't always take joy and delight or pleasure in good things. That's the
Yeah,
nature of being human, and so
yeah.
we actually have to be deliberate and conscientious about
Mhm.
developing sort of those muscles that are required in taking delight in anything that's even a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
And so if we can, learn to read good things better, then we will take more delight in them. I mean, I would not enjoy sitting down in front of a piano right now because I have no ability to play it. But if I learned and I watch other people who do it and do it well and see the joy they take in it, I know that that joy came with investment of time and sacrifice of resources, but that it was well worth it. And so for me,
Mhm.
reading good literature well is not as hard as playing a concert piano, but it still employs a set of skills um, that goes against so much that's the nature of our late modern world right now. It
Yeah.
requires time and attention and focus and not doing the other things, and so it doesn't come naturally to us, but it comes more easily the more we do it.
Yeah. And I would definitely say Wuthering Heights can absolutely teach us character, even if it's just showing us what not to do.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite books are the ones that are negative examples.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Like, maybe you should treat each other well. Maybe you should be careful whom you choose to spend your life with, you know? So let's see. Oh, so I suppose I was gonna ask if you were gonna see the new film adaptation,
Mhm.
but if you're not a fan of the book, you may not bother.
Yeah, I mean, I would see it if it's I don't know that much about the film director, but I've read a couple things that make me think this film director does do interesting things. So if I wanted to see it, I would see it on the basis of the film
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
So I don't have plans to see it as
Mhm.
a, you know, fan of Wuthering
Yeah.
Heights or
Well, and based on the trailer,
yeah.
I'm not sure anybody should see it as a fan of Wuthering Heights because
Right,
it's gonna
right.
be a new vision, which is fine.
Mhm.
And okay, so speaking of film adaptations, I know you had thoughts
Mhm.
about the Guillermo del Toro adaptation of Frankenstein.
Mhm.
Is there a film adaptation of Frankenstein that comes closest, like, of all the ones that are out there, is there one you would
Mm.
recommend for people who are just, like, purists about the book?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't watch a lot of film adaptations of novels for this very reason. And so I can't, and I've only seen a couple of Frankenstein that I did not like. And it's been years, so I'm not, I have no expertise on the film adaptations. However, during the pandemic, there was a National Theater dramatization on the stage with Benedict Cumberbatch, that was excellent. It was like something that they did. I'm sure it's still out there, but it was like a free thing for everyone to watch from home. And it was an adaptation, and it did take liberties, but it was very well done. So they're actually
Mhm,
stage adaptations often that I enjoy better than film adaptations because I
mhm.
appreciate film more as its own art, and somehow, often when they do adaptations, they violate the original work and then limit what they could do with the genre of film too. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. I will have to look that up.
And
That makes
I will say about the recent adaptation of Frankenstein is the aesthetics were spot on. It was, even though it was, it moved it from early 19th century to like steampunk, Victorian steampunk, with whatever, that's fine. It kind of goes. But
Mhm,
I thought the aesthetics were wonderful. The monster, the creature was amazing. So there's a lot that was good about it. I just, because those parts were so good about it, I just was disappointed that it changed entire plot lines and characters, because so much of it came so close. And again, I know it was like he just wanted to recreate sort of his own story, and
mhm.
Frankenstein invites that. It was just disappointing because I would love to see a very well done adaptation of the novel that Mary Shelley wrote, or at least one of them, because she has two versions. But so
Oh, there are 2 different versions?
yeah, there's the original version, and then, of 1818, I think, and then she actually made a lot of changes to it later on. And so whenever you're buying Frankenstein, you have to kind of know they're the two versions are considerably different.
Mhm,
Not not in terms of plot, but in some of the material that's included in it. The later version is a little bit more conservative, because Shelley became a little bit less radical as she grew up and had a son. But also the first version was heavily edited by Percy Shelley. So like who know, it's a very complicated text. I guess anyone can do whatever they want to with it, but I
mhm.
just really appreciate the text.
Yeah. Do you have like, which one is more prevalent in the
The
bookstore?
later one is more prevalent in the bookstores,
Okay.
so that's actually why for my edition, I chose the first one, because there
Okay.
just aren't as many,
Yeah.
that tends to be not, published as much.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
little rougher, it's a little more, like, and, not as polished, and also, yeah, so I think that's the bit, it just gives you a better sense of a 19-year-old
Yeah.
young woman writing this novel, hanging out with her friends, and so I
Mhm.
like that quality of it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what's crazy to is that she
Mhm.
was 19 when she wrote it. Um, alright, do you have a favorite book outside of your specialty? So outside of 18th, 19th century
Mhm.
Britain?
Yes, I do. This may change slowly over years, but usually I'll have one that for few years is on the top of my list, or on my short list. And right now it's Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Do you know it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, you must read it.
Okay.
I'm gonna advocate for it right now. It's actually, Claire Keegan writes short stories primarily, and this is a novella, or a long short story. It is utterly exquisite and perfect and beautiful, a little harsh and hard, but also like really uplifting of the soul by the
Ooh.
end.
Mhm.
And I recently read in an interview with her that she said she has 50 drafts of this work, 50.
Oh.
And when you read it, you will believe it because every single word is
Mhm.
perfect and resonant and there's just so much in it. And it's a beautifully crafted, wonderful story. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan.
Okay, yeah, we should read it if she did 50 dadgum drafts.
I know, right?
Oh, man,
Yeah.
could never. What are you reading now?
I just finished The Heart is a Lonely Hunter by
Mm,
Carson McCullers, which I
mhm,
had never read.
definitely.
And it was actually a little darker than I thought it would expect. I don't know what I was expecting. It is
Mhm,
Southern literature, so I should expect it to be a little bit dark.
mhm.
But it was being my first read. As soon as I finished, I wanted to go back and like reread it again
Okay.
because there it's just it's it's a classic work of literature for a reason. And it has so many it has multiple sort of main characters, and the way their stories intermingle is
Mm,
powerful and fascinating, even though I guess the real main character is the young girl who's somewhat modeled on Carson McCullers herself. But yeah, it's a classic of literature I'd never read, and I just
mm,
finished it. It's
very
good.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so where can people buy? I'm going to show the cover again for those of y'all watching the video. Where can people buy On Reading Well and You Have a Calling and all of the other great books?
They can buy any of those book at any of their favorite booksellers, independent booksellers, online, anywhere. And you can also just sort of get links to those places on my very simple website, which is karenswallowprior.com. That's a good place to kind of a landing place to connect with wherever I am. And the place where I am most these days online, and my website has my speaking schedule as well, but I've already mentioned this, but I'm really focusing on Substack, and writing about British literature kind of in order, sort of like a British literature survey. And right now we're reading Gulliver's Travels together, and it's just really, really delightful. That is a fun book. If you've never read it, or if you've only read the children, there's so many different children's versions. You need to read the real thing, because even though it's a delightful children's story, they take a lot of the best parts out for the children.
Right. Yeah, the only reference I have for Gulliver's Travels is wasn't there a Ted Danson like TV
Yeah,
movie?
there was, and that one's actually not too bad, but it's yeah, I mean, but it's just again, I watched it once and that was it. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the book itself is just delightful.
Yeah, I will have to read that. Well, we love to end with scripture when we can. Is there a Bible passage or a verse that sort of relates to your work that you'd like to share?
Well, again, it's revealing of my character, I guess, but probably my favorite book is Ecclesiastes. Um, and the verse that always comes to mind, living the life I am now with, speaking, writing, reading a lot, no, feeling overwhelmed, is Ecclesiastes 12:12. Of many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness to the soul. Um, and this is my life, but I take comfort in the fact that, I guess it's like I as much as I love reading and writing and studying literature, and as much joy it brings me, I have to know and be reminded, especially in the moments of weariness, that it cannot fulfill
Mm,
it will never end, and therefore it will never fulfill everything for me and about my life. It's just something that is wonderful to do and enjoy, but like everything else, it cannot be the ultimate fulfillment or meaning. I can only find that in the Lord and in
mhm.
the way that He has gifted me to do this and offered this kind of life to me. But um, I can't find my ultimate satisfaction in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary of Ecclesiastes in general.
Yes.
It's funny, our church, our pastor just started a series on Ecclesiastes, so
Oh,
we're
wow.
2 or 3 weeks in, and it's funny because you come back from Christmas, you're all happy, ready to start the new year, and then Ecclesiastes 1, life is meaningless.
Right? Vanity, vanity.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been challenging, but very cool and at the same
Oh, That's great.
Yeah. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to have you back on like anytime I read just a big chunky classic and want to discuss it.
Yeah, let's
Have you
do
back.
it. Let's do it. Thank you for having me. It was a fun conversation. I hope people are inspired to read a few more classics.
Yes, y'all read the classics. And if you enjoyed this episode of Oh My Word with Katie, please share it with your friends. Please give us both a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts so we can tell more people about how God shows up in words and stories. And if you enjoy the podcast, you might also enjoy Mississippi Christian Living Magazine, aka my day job, which you can find at mschristianliving.com. I'll talk to y'all soon.